welcome to my kitchen. I am Bea from Thermi Tucker, and I hope you'll enjoy today's session because I will be making almond biscotti with a little bit of a twist. I have seen a couple of different recipes, but I thought I'd add one little extra ingredient. So hope you will stay and join this session and see how simple it is to make some delicious dessert that is Italian inspired. So what you're going to do, the very first thing you're going to do is actually heat up your oven to 180 degrees Celsius, and then you're going to use either one or two of your pans. I have a really large pan that I usually utilize for banana bread or my normal bread, so I'm going to just bake one loaf. But on the instructions from Cookie Dough, when you call up the almond biscotti recipe, you'll actually see it says grease two small loaves, and that's measurements of 18 by 8 centimeters. So it's up to you. I have made this recipe a couple of times and I found that the one that I utilize works really well. So give it a try. If you find that the other option doesn't work, try this option. I will show you what it looks like before it goes in the oven. So the other thing you need to do is to actually line a baking tray with some baking paper, because you will need this when you're going to bake the biscotti at the end. So I will explain that. But what we're going to do, the very first portion of the recipe starts off with beating the eggs. But before we do that, I'm actually going to show you another little trick. It does call for 170 grams worth of caster sugar in this recipe. So I have raw sugar, that is normal sugar. I keep in my pantry in large quantities, as in that is the only sugar that I use. So when I'm needing to process anything in the Thermomix or make a recipe, I can actually make my own icing sugar or caster sugar. So today, I'm actually going to do this before I start the recipe, because as soon as I add the eggs, that means that the bowl is actually then obviously wet, and I would have to wash and dry and go through the process again. So I'm going to shortcut this by doing 170 grams worth of raw sugar, and then I've used the peel of 1 lemon. So let's put that in. I'm then going to go to the top portion of my machine where the little home is, touch that, and that will call up my home screen, my driver screen, that's what I call it. And I'm going to zip this up to speed 10 for 10 seconds. Alright, now what that has done is broken down that sugar and infused the sugar with the lemon flavor. So I'm going to show you what it looks like. This is it. Alright. And then that smells sensational, really, really good. So just pull that out and set that aside, because that will be added in one of the following steps later on in the recipe. But this is a great little tip for you to actually utilize your machine, the bowl, when it's still dry, and then you can continue with the rest of the recipe. So the next portion of the recipe is to actually start the beating part of your eggs. And something to bear in mind is that you would need to clean your bowl so that there's no oil. And I know that sounds really weird, but obviously we sometimes will use our bowl for some meat purposes. Maybe we haven't washed it properly. And what happens is a vinegar wash is essential to actually get good meringue, because that's basically what we'll be doing now, making a meringue. So I've gone ahead, before I've started this process, and given my machine a vinegar wash. So half a liter of water, half a liter of vinegar, and then I've spun up my speed to speed 10 so that it will actually clean the top, or reach the top of my lid. And then what I'm going to do is do that for 10 seconds so it cleans everything. Then I let the water settle, and then I'm going to add in my whisk, because what I want to do is make sure this also does not have any fat or any oils on it, so that it will not cause issues with making the meringue. So that's a little tip for you guys extra. So we're going to go back to the egg whites. I'm going to put in the butter flour and then I'm going to add your 3 egg whites. It does say on there room temperature, and I have actually done it before without making it room temperature. And then what it says is leave your lid off, and this will process for 5 minutes on 37 degrees, and the speed is 3.5. Now, something to bear in mind, eggs are very unique. Each egg that you're going to get from the supermarket or from your farmer's market is going to be unique. And freshness obviously plays a big part in that. And hence the reason why they've asked you to lift off the measuring cup, because you actually have to watch to see what is happening with the egg inside. So something to bear in mind, you'll actually see it says at the bottom of the screen, whipping, and then it says until soft peaks form. I have made this recipe before where I've let it go over, and what I discovered was it became very dense. It was far too stodgy, I suppose is the right word. So what you want to look for is definitely the soft peaks. So how you test that is you get a spoon if you want, or as you're lifting out your whisk, you will notice there's like little peaks that come off of that, and that will give you an indication that it is ready for the next portion of this recipe. So we'll be adding in the sugar, adding in flour, adding in almonds, and then putting that in the oven, in the loaf tin, for 25 to 35 minutes on 180 degrees Celsius. Then what happens after that, it still has to be hot. So what you're going to do is tip it out as soon as it comes out the oven. The way to test that it's done is pierce it with something that is sharp, and if it comes out with no crumbs on, it's ready to go. And then you're going to slice that and put that on your tray and bake that. So I will explain that more. I'm going to just show you. This looks pretty good. Like I say, I've made this before a couple of times, so I am used to this. Test it if you need to. But the next part is with the butterfly whisk still in place. We're going to then do the, so put it on 3.5. We're going to add in slowly into the mix your sugar. So like I say, this is adding the meringue element of it, sweetening it up. You flavored it with the lemon. So bit by bit, this is only for 3 minutes. So it does go pretty quickly. You have to be on the ball and make sure you're watching what you're doing. Try and avoid getting the sugar on the top of the whisk if possible. And we'll keep doing this. That looks like it's almost finished. It smells really good. It's that lemon. Delicious. Wow. So that's 2 more minutes, and I'll go back to explaining what you do when you slice your biscotti. You must make sure that it is really, really thin. The thinner it is, the quicker it is to crisp up. On the recipe it says to you, once you've cut it and laid it out on your baking sheet with your parchment paper, you're going to add that back into the oven 180 degrees Celsius for 5 extra minutes. Now, if you love your biscotti really brown and crispy on the end, you can add extra time. You can flip it over and just keep an eye on it, because it does burn if you forget about it and walk away. But that's a great idea for you to do. Play with the recipe, see what you love. I have made this before without the lemon and included some vanilla extract, and it was very, very good. I was given some thumbs up, so that's a good sign. And then for this recipe, there are other variations. You will notice in this recipe it gives you the option to add chocolate. I have seen biscotti made with some pistachio nuts. And I'm sure, I think the other one that I have seen is also apricot, dried apricot. So have a look at cookiedoo.com.au and you will be able to find some recipes that are available. And of course, if you're Italian, please go and search for the recipes that are authentic in Italian, and you can make them in English. You will just have to have a device next to you to do the translate on Google Translate, and you can copy that over onto the machine and make it manually by getting to your driving screen with those 3 dots. So if you have any questions or you're not sure how to do that, please leave a comment in the comment section below and I'll be happy to help you. But as I mentioned, this is almond biscotti, the traditional recipe in English. So have a look for that on cookiedoo.com.au. Alright, so next part is to remove your butterfly. Then what we're going to do, I'll just show you what this mixture looks like. So it's become a little bit more liquid. I find it's easy to just tap off the excess on the side of the bowl. And then the next part is to actually add in your flour. So that's 200 grams worth of your plain flour, not self-raising, just plain. So I'm going to pop that on. I'll just double check myself because I did weigh this out, but I'm checking just in case. 200. All right. There we go. The next ingredient is 130 grams of your raw almonds. Pour that in. And then it says optional 40 grams worth of chocolate, so your dark chocolate. And then you are going to mix this for a couple of seconds, so 10 seconds on 1.5 speed. That agitates it a bit, then you have to scrape that down and repeat that process with a couple of extra seconds added. It's just to make sure that it's combined properly. And then the next step, as I said, is just do that again for 20 seconds. So I'm just going to make sure that is scraped down. I have preheated my oven so it is ready to go. So we'll just process this. This is speed 1.5, and then again for 20 seconds. If you find that it does need a little bit of extra time just to swirl it around, I would either do it by hand or you can add a couple of extra seconds on the time over here. And then what we're going to do, as I said, grease with some butter your loaf. And as I said, if you want 2, you can. It does actually say to put water on top of it once you've molded it in your loaf, but I've never found that is necessary for this recipe, but you're welcome to follow along. So this is what the mixture looks like. I'm now just going to make sure that I spread this over the loaf. Please do make sure, it is very important that you actually make sure it is well greased. If you don't, the biscotti will stick into the loaf, and that is the worst thing ever. I promise. It's not good. So it is a bit of a sticky mixture. You will find some of it will stick at the bottom on the blades. I'll show you a little tip that I love to do. I know it actually makes the mixture a little bit stodgy, I suppose is the best word, but I would rather have that stodginess at the end of my loaf than waste. So there is quite a lot of the mixture on there, and like I say, if you've been watching me for a while, I do not like to waste. I want to make sure I'm getting everything off. So I'm going to touch my home button and then the speed, and then I'm going to speed that to 10. What that does is flick off that ingredient off of the blade onto the side, and then I'll put it on the corner of my biscotti. So that's what it does. Cleans your blades, and then you don't waste. So that's quite a bit of, that's basically a slice of biscotti or 2. So I just put that in the corner, and then bake this for 25 to 35 minutes at 180 degrees Celsius, and then repeat the part where when it comes out you slice it, place it on the tray, bake for 5 minutes, 180 degrees, and you have some authentic Italian dessert. So I hope you've enjoyed this recipe, and thanks for joining me today. I'm Bea from Thermitaka. If you need any help, let me know. I'm happy to help. Have a great day. Take care.